Hello, my name is Mandolin Royal, and today I want to give you a little update on where I'm at with the Chantecler that hatched back at the end of June. And I want to go over the comparison between a slow-grown heritage breed and how the American Bresse are different than these. And I also want to explain a bit about what you could expect based on the types of birds that you're raising and kind of give a classification of what it all means. So that then, when you're sourcing your own poultry, you can have a loose idea of what it is you're looking for so that you can actually meet your flock goals. Because there's a huge range. They are not all created equal. There's a lot of differences. Now, for a little backstory, I don't want to do commercial hybrids. Commercial hybrids have accelerated everything from growth to rate of lay and everything else to where you get a lot in a hurry in a very efficient way, and it's cheaper to do it that way. It's easier. You don't have to worry about breeding. Just buy them every time you need them. One and done. But I don't do things that way. So now I'm going to explain some of that nuance in doing it in a more traditional way and what growth rate means. It's subjective, it depends, and it varies quite a bit. So in front of me here, this is 11 pullets, and the 3 cockerels who showed the largest, broadest, widest frames of body. I don't have weights on these 3 males yet. That's going to wait until I nitpick through these and sort out these pullets as well. But the pullets, they're nowhere near ready to sort. They're too young. 17.5 weeks is way too soon to be going through these birds. So I focused on what was important to me and what I would like to see these birds do in the future. And that's how I selected the 3 males that are in here with these pullets. But I'm going to ignore these all winter. We're going to wrap this tractor, make it winter tight, and I'm not going to worry about breeding selections and finalizing things until spring. I'll tell you why. And I'll show you why. Because at the end of this video, I'm going to show you the processing results of the extra males. So next, let's move on up to the barn and look at who's going to be in the freezer and those differences there while discussing growth rate and why breeding selection is really important. Because when you're doing the breeding selecting, you are steering the birds towards where you want them to be. So, moving on. So here I am with the American Bresse pullets that also hatched with the Chantecler. Look at that. That's an egg. I bet it came from her. Because they're 17.5 weeks old, I know she developed too quickly, and that's too soon to be seeing an egg. And I bet she doesn't weigh 5 pounds. Because when pullets start laying, meaningful growth stops. So I bet she's not going to make it for weight because she's done growing. Now these others that look more behind, they're going to end up as bigger birds. And they probably will make weight. And I've got another 4 or 5 weeks to make those choices from these girls. I don't have to wait until spring. I only have to wait until first eggs. Go from there. So the girls, they'll have their own video as I go through them. But the rest of this video, it's all about the boys. So let's get to them. So I have my evaluation station set up with a scale and a notepad. And it's all cleaned off for when they flap their wings in protest. I don't get a face full of dust from that. This boy, he's been in here for 3 days because he was bad. He was being too much of a bully in the pen he came from. And now he's sitting there trying to build me a nest. So he's in quarantining till our Tuesday processing day. But he's still part of this evaluation today because he's in that same hatch group. 17 and a half weeks old and trying to act like he's a grown rooster. Being awful. Now, the 4 Chantecler males are in here temporarily till Tuesday. I really like these guys for different little individual reasons, but I don't like them as much as the other 3 down the hill. I see promise in this group, but I also know it's going to be 3 or 4 months before I see more of an idea of that promise, because these are a very slow burn. And that's because they stem from exhibition type stock. And when you do exhibition quality birds, they take their sweet time growing. Because it's not a race. It is who ends up as the superior bird after 1 year old. Potentially even after 2 years old. And it's pretty common for those pullets to not even think about laying eggs until they're 8 months old. Because it doesn't matter before they're a year old. When you're doing higher exhibition grade quality, you're prepared to wait. And you're prepared to let them fully mature before you make your breeding choices. Now with the American Bresse, some of those bloodlines out there have an accelerated growth rate to where you can make decisions a little bit sooner. And that's really convenient for me. But I still like to play around in these other areas of chickendom. And I have just enough pen space to try the Chantecler Pure, as well as my little side project. If you've been following along, you already know I'm working on a hybrid of these two to try to get that winter-proof comb onto the table traits and growth rate of the American Bresse. We'll see. I have some F3 chicks that have hatched. Growth rate's still behind. But that's okay. I full well expected 5 to 7 years to play around with it. And I don't know, I might need a decade before I can accelerate the Chantecler. It depends on how rigid their genetics already are. But the flock that I source these guys from, there might be enough diversity left in there to capture what I'm looking for just through happenstance of hatching a bunch. I don't know. We'll see. So first I'm going to get the Bresse boys out and get their weights. We'll talk about them real quick. Then I'll pull these guys out. We'll handle them, weigh them, see how they compare, and what those differences actually are, and where they do and don't have meat, and what we can expect in the months going forward from the other guys. Because these guys need to come off the feed bill, and I need this pen. So, now to compare. Alright, so I wrangled these 4, got their weights, and I do need to say, this past season, I did not use the fancy feed, and I did not use the Fertrell supplement. And that's because I wanted to see what my genetics did after much improvement, and after doing good nutrition, what happens if I stop it. Because anyone raising my line, but not feeding the way that I feed, what can they expect? So I did that all this season. I blanket fed Kalmbach. The grower feed is a 20%. And that's what they got. So at this age, I'm full well expecting 7 pounds or more in live weight from the American Bresse. What's in front of me here for this particular single batch that's already been thinned out a bit because we eat a lot of chicken. This guy, 5 pounds, 10 ounces, 5 pounds, 10 ounces, 5 pounds, 9 ounces, 7 pounds, and what? I gotta see what the ounces were. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. So only one of these 4 made the live weight preference. Will he end up too big for breeding? I don't know. It takes time. Because the one mistake you can make with American Bresse is finalizing your breeding choices early. The same principles of wait and see applies, but the benefit here is the growth rate and thinning the herd leading up to the final decisions. So starting at 12, 14 weeks, that's when I want to be processing unnecessary males. They showed me something I know I won't need. Might be slip wing, might be knock knees, might be really awful combs, like this guy has an awful comb. Actually, they all do. But this guy got all the table trays without fancy feeding, without supplementation. He got the size. He also got pretty good leg color. These guys are pale in the legs. That guy's pale too. So if I had to knee-jerk pick, I'd keep this one. And probably this idiot, because of his vigor and because of how he does try, I bet he'd take care of girls pretty well. Usually they do. He hasn't given me any attitude. He was only picking on these 2. But not this guy. I think this guy's better in the brain. But look how mature they look at 17.5 weeks. And those weights. 7 pounds, 3 ounces on a purebred heritage type of bird. Crazy. But you have to watch out for maturing too early, like in the case of that Pullet. And since my scale is out, and you guys are probably wondering what she does weigh with that first egg, I'm going to snatch her and find out real quick. And then we're going to move on to the Chantecler boys, and then we're going to talk about what's different. So let me get these guys back where they go, sneak a peek at that one Pullet, move on to the Chantecler. So the Little Miss Overachiever Pullet weighed in at 4 pounds, 4 ounces, as suspected, not over 5 pounds. And her little bitty egg, 31 grams. So she'll earn breakfast duty. She's not going anywhere near a breeding pen because that's going to sabotage what I want from my flock. Sorry, I put those boys back in the pen and now they have to sort out their differences again. I put that bully back in so that I could keep Mr. 7 pounds up here as we go through the Chantecler boys. But yeah, if your pullets are maturing too early, you're probably going to be looking at 2 to 3 months of eggs that are too small, and you shouldn't hatch those. You want your hatching eggs to be a bare bones minimum 58 grams, because your chick size at hatch affects their growth rate and everything after that. And that's why this one's going to be out of breeding contention. So I'm going to move her probably over with the cull pullets who were called for other things, because she popped off accurate enough. Good coloration, good body shape, good proportions, just too little overall. And it's not going to get much better because now she wants to lay eggs. That's unfortunate. But it's like that sometimes. There's a lot of decisions to be made as you go through the first year of growth. And there's a lot of little details to pay attention to along that way. So now that we answered that question of what she really weighs, let's move on to the Chantecler boys. And maybe, for comparison's sake, I'll go look for a big buff Chantecler pullet and see what that weight is today. And then what their weights are in the spring when they actually start laying and doing all this. It's all very interesting. And that's why I try, and that's why I pay attention to the details. Because this stuff is fascinating. Alright, I've got the 4 Chantecler males weighed. And I feel like I should probably take Mr. 7 pounds and put him back in that pen and grab another 5-pounder for comparison. So, the first slot here on the left, 4 pounds 5 ounces and 4 pounds 6 ounces. Spot in the middle, 4 pound 10 ounces, 5 pound 1 ounce. Now the one that weighs 5 pound 1 ounces, he's the guy right here on the right, and he does have added body width compared to the others. But the American Bresse, just bigger all around. These guys all hatched on the same day. Because anytime I receive shipped eggs, I set some of my own eggs with them in case the hatch rate's really low. Because I'm not going to go out and buy extra chicks to brood with a low hatch. I just hatch some of mine with them. And then I get to see those comparisons. And that's always insightful. And it always reminds me what's important and what I'm working on. So as I work myself towards a purebred pen of Chantecler, which is insurance for my project, because that's the comb I need, and it is a recessive trait to a single comb. The cushion comb is not dominant, which adds a complexity to the breeding effort. So with that in mind, but trying to get those table traits of the Bresse with this comb, that's where it gets tricky. That's why the project birds, they're going to take a while, and they're nowhere near ready yet. But let me go ahead and collect my thoughts after getting the weights, and then I'll probably get this largest Chantecler out and handle him, talk about his bone spacing, what he feels like in the hands, and then I'll swap this guy out for one that's a little more comparable in size. Because this guy's over 7 pounds. That's not fair. We're not doing that comparison. So I'll put him back, swap him out. We'll get back to this. So I put Mr. 7-pounder back and grabbed the bully back out of the American Bresse pen. Because he was in there causing trouble like he was. Plus, he's only 7 ounces different in weight than the heaviest Chantecler male. So, to refresh my own mind, I'm here right now, 5 pounds 10 ounces versus 5 pounds 1 ounce. That's only a 7 ounce difference. But if you look at the birds themselves, and you look at the structure, and you look at the shape, width comes to mind. The width of body can hide a lot of weight. Now in my flock, I select them specifically for early width of body. Without neglecting length, without neglecting depth, I look at the total package. But the main driver of early harvest potential from a dual-purpose bird with a good meat yield. I'm not talking about stew birds. I'm talking about a nice whole roaster. I'm talking about fried chicken. Because those earlier ages is peak tenderness. The older they get, the tougher they get. So if you want to manage your population from your flock, which is all the extra boys and all those females that don't quite make the cut, you want to think about how you want to cook them. What are you going to do with them? Because if the Chantecler don't get a meaningful yield till way later, you're at low and slow for your cooking options. But your early harvest, let's say 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 16 weeks, that's when you have the most cooking opportunity in all of the shapes and forms available. Cornish cross is tender because they're babies. They're 8 weeks old on average for harvest. And that's because they're double muscled. And that's not something you can breed at home. You buy it, you use it, repeat. Now, if you want a sustainable flock, you have to pick which traits you value, when you value seeing those traits, to find out if it's worth all the effort or not. So the American Bresse are not going to walk into an exhibition hall and win a show. They can't. They're not APA recognized. Not yet. And it's probably going to be a long time before they are. Because they need to have consistency. They need to have predictable expression of what they are. They need a group of breeders working on the common goals. And there's rules to follow for APA submission. Now, if I wanted to walk into a show, bring some birds, the Chantecler will give me that opportunity. If I breed them up better than how I found them, there might be pretty good odds of winning something. Maybe best of breed, maybe not, I don't know. But because they are an approved APA variety, I have that freedom to do that if I so choose. American Bresse are nowhere near it. But you get to eat pretty good in the meantime. Now, when we look at the structure, come on. He has a lot of substance and a lot of mass. If you look at the leg bones, they're just about as thick as the leg bones on this guy. But the rest of the body, that substance, it's a lot different. And most of it's in the width. So because I selected for that early, over the 7 generations I've had into the American Bresse, that's why it's there. These guys are new to me since June. I haven't had a chance to breed these the way that I would. I'll start next year. See what they do. And this is not one of the 3 I set aside to keep. There's 3 more I like better than him. They probably don't weigh much different though, because there's hand feel involved. The feel in the hands. When you go through and you sort them, you want to measure out their bone spacing. You want to feel the meat to bone ratio. You want to feel if there's meat along that keel bone. That's your breast meat. Based on my experience for the last several years, breast meat in purebred poultry is lacking. You can hardly find it anywhere in any breed of dual purpose anything. And that's because they're predominantly bred to be egg layers now. Why do you need meat from an egg layer when you can just go get Cornish cross and be done with it? Well, I personally want to raise everything from the egg. I want to own the entire process of generating our food. So with that in mind, it was a heck of a crash course, and there's a lot to learn. And I'm not done learning. I still have a pretty long way to go. But I feel like I understand the core principles. He's going to turn out to be a pretty nice bird. It's going to take him a while. This guy, he's okay. But I have better. So the next video, the part 2 of this, is going to be the dressed results, because a lot is going to make sense when I show you that difference in the shrink bag without the feathers, because you can achieve a lot of shape and a lot of type from the feathers. But I'm more interested in what's under the feathers. How long I have to grow them till I see a result. Oh, man. Roosters are so funny. But anyways, this is part 1. Part 2, we're going to get down and dirty into the actual yield of what we see and what I'm talking about when I talk about width, depth, length, substance, meat to bone ratios, and all that. These two breeds are very, very different from each other. And then when you consider all the other breeds that carry that label of dual purpose, there's still many more differences and many more tolerances and many more selection parameters. If you're breeding them, you're selecting. And if you're selecting, you gotta think about what you want, what you need, what you like, what the birds are capable of, and what's correct for their breed. Not a single breed has a time frame that's officially noted for growth rate. That's on the breeder. And it's going to vary. It's going to be subjective, and it depends. When you get into a show hall with birds, they only care that they meet their breed standard. For cockerels and pullets, they're looking for ages between 6 months up to a year. And for adults, 1 year or older. They need to be in good feather. Man, those show feathers, they matter a lot. But condition also matters. Physical type also matters. Ties in with the structure. And that structure, that's also what can fill a shrink bag. So stay tuned for part 2 when I show you what I felt in my hands, because I can't do it when they're feathered. I can't show you that. But we'll get there next week. So feel free to like and subscribe. I'll show you more than you ever wanted to know about chickens. So back in a bit.